When my granddaughter found me online, I didn't believe it at first. I thought it was some kind of joke, a stranger with a familiar smile. But then she said my name the way only my daughter used to say it. Soft, unsure, almost afraid of what might come next. And in that moment, my heart forgot how to beat for a second. It had been 37 years since I last saw my family. 37 years of silence. 37 birthdays I spent alone pretending it didn't matter anymore. But the truth is, it always mattered. It always hurt. I never expected to hear from anyone again. My daughter had closed that door long ago. And I never blamed her for it, not entirely. I made my share of mistakes. I was too proud, too stubborn, and far too late to say sorry when it could have made a difference. But life has a strange way of circling back, doesn't it? It waits for the quietest moments, when you think the world has forgotten your name, and then it whispers something back to you. For me, that whisper came as a message notification. It said, "Hi, I think you might be my grandmother." I sat there staring at those words on my old laptop, hands trembling so much I couldn't even move the mouse. The room was silent except for the sound of the clock ticking on the kitchen wall. Tick, 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 like the sound of all the years that had passed between us. I didn't know what to do. Should I reply? Should I ignore it? What if she was just curious, not ready to know me? Not ready to forgive what happened? I'd spent so many years convincing myself I was fine on my own, that the past was gone, and I was better off keeping it that way. But deep down, in a quiet place I rarely visited, I'd always hoped someone would find me. Someone who might look past the stories, the mistakes, the silence. And now, here she was, my granddaughter, reaching out through a glowing screen. I didn't know her name. I didn't know what she looked like now. But something in me, a voice I hadn't heard in decades, whispered, "Don't let this moment pass." So I took a deep breath, wiped the tears off my cheeks, and started typing. "Hello, sweetheart. I think you might be right. I live in a small town called Willow Creek, a place most people drive through without ever stopping. It's quiet here, the kind of quiet that hums like an old lullaby. My house sits at the edge of the road, white paint fading, porch swing creaking whenever the wind passes by. It's been home for nearly 40 years now. The walls know more secrets than I do. They've heard my laughter, my arguments, my prayers whispered into the dark. And for the longest time, they've also heard my silence. I wake up early most days. Old habits never die, I guess. I make myself a cup of coffee, sit by the window, and watch the sun rise behind the maple trees. Sometimes I talk to myself. Sometimes to God, it's easier than talking to people who aren't there anymore. My daughter's name is Emily. She was my only child, bright, stubborn, and kind. Though she tried to hide it behind a tough front. She was 16 when her father left. That was the year everything changed. Her father, Tom, and I had been married for almost 20 years. We met young, married quick, and built a life out of love and long working hours. He worked at the lumber mill. I managed the diner in town. We were simple people. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Until one day we didn't. Marriage isn't one big storm. It's 1,000 tiny raindrops that wear you down. Ours was like that, a slow, steady erosion. We stopped listening. We stopped touching. Then one morning, Tom packed his bags, said he needed time to figure things out, and drove away. He never came back. Emily was furious with him. But she was angrier with me. She thought I should have stopped him, fought harder, done something. And maybe she was right. But I didn't know how. I'd spent so many years trying to hold everything together that I didn't realize I'd already lost it. After he left, things between Emily and me started to crumble. We argued about everything. Her grades, her friends, the house, even the groceries. She began spending more time out, avoiding home. And I avoided her too. It hurt too much to see her father's eyes in her face every day. The night she left still feels like yesterday. She was 18, suitcased by the door, trembling with both anger and heartbreak. "I can't do this anymore, Mom," she said. "You don't even look at me the same." I wanted to tell her. I did. That she was all I had left. But pride is a cruel thing. Instead, I said something cold. Something sharp. Something I can never take back. "Then maybe it's best if you go." The look in her eyes when I said that. It still wakes me up at night. She walked out into the rain, and I stood there by the window, watching her taillights disappear into the dark. I thought she'd come back the next day. or the next week. But she never did. Years passed. Letters stopped coming. Christmas cards stopped too. The silence between us became its own kind of company. I grew older, moved slower, learned how to live around the emptiness. Sometimes I'd see families in town, mothers and daughters laughing over coffee, and I'd look away before the ache could catch up. Other times I'd sit by the window at night, whispering her name under my breath. Emily. Just to remember how it felt to say it. When the first grandchild was born, I only heard about it through an old neighbor who still talked to someone in town. I didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl. I didn't dare ask. By then, I'd convinced myself that they were better off without me. I filled my days with small routines. Water the plants. Feed the stray cat. Bake too many muffins I couldn't finish. And when night came, I'd sit by the radio and listen to old songs. The ones Tom used to hum in the kitchen. The ones Emily used to sing in the car. It wasn't a bad life. Just a quiet one. A life made of memories, not moments. Then, a few months ago, everything changed with that one message. It was a gray Thursday afternoon. I was sorting through some old photographs when my laptop chimed. I don't get many messages, mostly bills and weather alerts. So I almost ignored it. But then I saw the name. I didn't recognize it, but something about it made me pause. When I opened the message, I saw a young woman's face. Brown hair, soft eyes, a familiar smile. Her words were simple. Hi, my name's Clara. I think you might be my grandmother. My hands froze. My heart did too. I clicked on her profile picture, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. She looked so much like Emily when she was young. Same eyes. Same small dimple near the left cheek. I read her message a dozen times before I could even think of replying. Was this real? Was it possible? Or was it some cruel mistake? A stranger reaching out with a name she'd heard in passing? But then she sent another message. My mom doesn't know I'm writing to you. She told me not to, but I needed to find you. I just wanted to know who you are. Those words broke me open. I sat there for a long time, tears falling onto the keyboard. Feeling every year between that night she left and this moment now. I typed back slowly. Hello, sweetheart. I think you might be right. I didn't know what would happen next, but somewhere deep inside me, a tiny flame flickered back to life, something I hadn't felt in decades. Hope. The days after that first message felt different. For years, my house had been filled with the same sounds, the kettle's whistle, the clock's ticking, the hum of the refrigerator. But now there was something else, a quiet excitement. Like the air right before the rain. Clara and I began writing every evening. She would tell me about her college classes, about the little bookstore where she worked on weekends, about her dog Benny, who had a habit of stealing socks. And I told her about Willow Creek, about the diner that still made the best apple pie, about the neighbor who played guitar on his porch every Sunday afternoon, and about the flowers in my garden that always bloomed too early. She called me Grandma after 3 days. I cried the first time she did. Our conversations stretched longer each night. Sometimes she'd ask small, careful questions about the past, questions I knew she had been holding on to for years. Did you ever meet my dad? What was Mom like as a kid? Why don't you and Mom talk? That last one always landed like a weight on my chest. I'd type and delete again, until finally I would write something small, something safe. We just lost our way, sweetheart. Sometimes love gets quiet, and people forget how to listen. She never pushed too hard after that. She seemed to understand that some doors take time to open. A week later, she asked if she could call me. I said yes before my courage could fade. That night, when the phone rang, I almost didn't answer. My hands were trembling so badly I was afraid I'd drop it. But when I heard her voice, young, gentle, a little nervous, something inside me melted. Hi, Grandma, she said softly. And just like that, all the years between us disappeared. We talked for almost 2 hours. She laughed easily, the same laugh Emily had when she was a teenager, the kind that filled a room and made everyone around her smile. When we said goodbye, she promised to call again soon. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the echo of her voice. For the first time in decades, I didn't feel invisible. But happiness, I've learned, has a way of stirring up the past. It makes the ghosts restless, 2 weeks later, Clara wrote me again, but her message was shorter this time. Mom found out. My stomach dropped. I stared at those words, reading them over and over. She didn't say much else that night. Just that her mother had seen our messages and was upset, really upset. Emily told her that some things were better left in the past. That there were reasons I'd been out of their lives. I didn't know what those reasons were anymore. Maybe the truth had changed in the telling, as it so often does with time. I wanted to write back, to explain everything, to defend myself, but I didn't. I sat there in silence, my fingers frozen above the keyboard. The next morning, Clara messaged again. She's not talking to me right now. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to know you. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer for her. I knew the pain of being caught between love and loyalty. It's the kind that doesn't leave scars on the skin but deep inside the heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching old photographs. Remembering the years when Emily was Clara's age, we used to talk about everything. She'd sit on the counter while I cooked, asking about life, about love, about dreams, and somewhere along the way we lost that. Maybe I was too tired. Maybe too proud. Maybe both. 3 days later, the phone rang again. It wasn't Clara this time. It was her mother. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the wind on her end of the line, the faint sound of traffic. Then she said, "Why now, Mom?" Her voice was older, steadier, but I'd have known it anywhere. I didn't know how to answer. The truth was, I hadn't gone looking for anyone. Clara had found me, but I said softly because maybe it's time. She laughed, not out of joy, but the kind of laugh that hides tears. Time? You had time. You had 30 years to pick up the phone. Her words cut deep because they were true. I know, I whispered. I know I did. Silence stretched between us again. Then, quieter. She's my daughter, Mom, my little girl. And you weren't there for her. For me. There was nothing I could say to undo that. So I told her the only thing I could. I'm sorry, Emily, I never stopped loving you. She didn't answer. The line went quiet, and then I heard the faint click as the call ended. I sat there holding the phone, staring at nothing, feeling the years fall around me like old dust. That night, I thought Clara would stop writing. But she didn't. The next morning, there was another message waiting for me. She's angry, Grandma. But I'm not giving up. I want to see you. I stared at the words, hardly daring to believe them. I didn't know what to say. My heart wanted to say yes. But my mind was afraid of reopening wounds that had only just begun to scar. After a long pause, I wrote back, "Only if your mother's okay with it, sweetheart." She replied almost instantly, "She won't be. But maybe someday she will. I just want to meet you, even if it's just once." Her determination reminded me so much of Emily when she was young, stubborn, fearless, full of heart. For a few days I didn't answer. I prayed, I walked, I talked to the wind. And then one morning I sent her a message. "All right, Clara, if you really want to come, I'll be here. Always." She sent back a little heart. Simple, quiet, hopeful. The next weekend she came. I still remember the sound of that car pulling up outside my gate. I stood on the porch wringing my hands, feeling like a child waiting for something she didn't know she deserved. When she stepped out, I froze. There she was, real, alive, smiling nervously. She looked just like Emily did the day she graduated high school. Same hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Same hopeful eyes. "Hi, Grandma," she said softly. I wanted to run to her, to hold her, to apologize for every birthday, every Christmas, every moment I'd missed. But my feet wouldn't move. She walked closer and then, without a word, wrapped her arms around me. And I finally let myself cry. It felt like the years between us melted away. Like the world had paused to give us back what we'd both lost. We sat inside for hours that day, drinking tea and talking. She showed me pictures of her life, her friends, her apartment, her mother. Emily looked beautiful. Older, yes, but still the same. "I think Mom misses you," Clara said quietly, looking down at her cup. "She just doesn't know how to say it." I smiled through my tears. "Neither do I, sweetheart. Neither do I." The week after Clara's visit, the house felt different again. Her laughter still seemed to float in the rooms. Her teacup sat on the counter as if she might return any minute. I caught myself smiling for no reason, humming old tunes while watering the plants. Then, one afternoon, I heard a car outside. For a second, I thought Clara had come back early. But when I looked through the curtain, my breath stopped.
It wasn't Clara.
It was Emily. She stood beside the car, uncertain, her hands gripping the door. The wind lifted her hair the way it used to when she was young. For a moment, I just stared, afraid that if I blinked, she'd vanish like a dream. I opened the door but didn't step out. She looked up, met my eyes, and for the first time in 37 years, my daughter and I faced each other. Neither of us spoke right away. Then she said quietly, "Clara told me she came here." Her voice was steady but tight, like someone holding back more than words. "I didn't ask her to," I said, "but I'm glad she did." She gave a short, dry laugh. "Of course you are." Then she looked away, scanning the yard, the peeling paint, the garden. "This place hasn't changed much," she murmured. I wanted to tell her that everything had changed except me, but the words wouldn't come. "Do you want to come in?" I asked softly. She hesitated, then nodded. Inside, she looked around slowly, her fingers brushing the edge of the old family photo still hanging crooked on the wall. It was taken the summer before Tom left. She stared at it for a long moment. "You kept this," she whispered. "I kept everything," I said, even when I thought I shouldn't. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten hundreds of dinners in silence near the end. I poured her coffee out of habit. She didn't touch it. For a while, we just listened to the ticking clock. Finally, she said, "I didn't come here to fight." "I know," I said. "I came because Clara loves you. She talks about you every day now. And I don't want her to carry my anger. It's heavy." I looked at her, really looked. The lines around her eyes, the tired way she held herself. And I realized she'd been carrying more than anger. She'd been carrying loneliness too. "Emily," I began, my voice shaking. I was wrong. About so many things. I was hurt, and I let that hurt speak for me. I should have come after you. I should have called. But I didn't, and I've regretted it every day since. Tears slid down her cheeks before she could stop them. She pressed her lips together and shook her head. "You don't know what those years were like. Tell me," I said. "I want to know." She looked at me, almost surprised by the invitation. Then she exhaled and began talking, slowly at first. Then faster, as if opening a window that had been shut for too long. She told me about working 2 jobs. About the nights she cried in the bathroom so Clara wouldn't hear. About birthdays she spent wishing I'd call. And the anger that grew each time I didn't. She told me how she'd made up stories to explain why her mother didn't have a mother. And finally she told me that forgiving me felt impossible until Clara found me. "She made me see you again," she said softly. "Not the woman I hated, but the one I loved before everything broke." I reached across the table, slow and careful, and placed my hand over hers. She didn't pull away. "I never stopped being that woman," I whispered. "I just forgot how to show it." For a long time we sat there, both crying quietly. The years between us didn't vanish, but they softened, like snow melting under the first spring sun. After a while she asked, "Do you ever think about Dad?" "All the time," I said. "Not the leaving part, the early years. The picnics, the nights we stayed up fixing that old radio. I don't hate him anymore. I hope he found peace." She nodded slowly. "I guess we all needed that." Outside, rain began to fall, gentle, steady, cleansing. We listened in silence. It sounded like forgiveness. Then she said something I hadn't expected. "Clara's birthday is next month. She wants us both there." My breath caught. "She told me. Would you come?" I stared at her, hardly daring to believe. "If you'll have me." She managed a small smile. The same shy smile she had when she was 10 and brought me a wilted flower from the yard. "I think it's time," she said. The following weeks passed in slow, careful steps. We spoke on the phone a few times. Short calls, but gentle ones. Each one felt like a stitch mending a tear that had been open too long. When Clara's birthday came, I almost backed out that morning. My hands shook as I wrapped the small gift. A silver bracelet that once belonged to Emily when she was a girl. But then Clara called. "Please come, Grandma," she said. "Mom's making your lemon pie recipe." How could I refuse that? The drive to their house felt endless. My heart thudded like a drum the entire way. When I arrived, Clara ran to the car before I'd even turned off the engine. She hugged me so tight I thought I might break, in the best way. Inside, the house smelled of vanilla and fresh paint. Emily was in the kitchen, apron dusted with flour, hair tied back. She turned, our eyes met, and she smiled, small but real. "Hi, Mom," she said. It had been decades since I'd heard her call me that. I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded and smiled back. The afternoon moved gently. We ate, we laughed a little, mostly because Clara kept making jokes to keep us from crying. At one point, she brought out a photo album she'd made, 3 generations in one book. Old black and white pictures of Tom and me, color photos of Emily's childhood, and new ones of Clara growing up. Emily turned a page and whispered, "I forgot how small my hands were." I smiled. "You used to draw stars on your fingers." She laughed softly. "You remember that?" "Every detail," I said. For the first time in decades, laughter felt easy again. When it was time to leave, Emily walked me to the door. The evening light spilled through the window, painting everything gold. She said quietly, "I can't promise everything's fixed." "I wouldn't believe you if you did," I said with a small smile. "But," she added, "maybe we can start fresh." I reached out and held her hand. "That's all I ever wanted." She nodded. Then, almost shyly, she leaned forward and kissed my cheek. I walked to the car feeling lighter than I had in years. Behind me, through the open door, I heard Clara's voice. "See, Mom? I told you she'd come." And Emily answered, "I'm glad she did." That night, back in Willow Creek, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the stars blink awake. The air smelled like rain and new beginnings. I thought about how strange life is, how it bends, breaks, and somehow finds its way back to itself. How one message, one brave young heart, can rewrite decades of silence. I whispered a thank you to the night. For the chance, for the courage, for my granddaughter who refused to give up on love. It was late one afternoon when it happened. I was sitting by the window, reading the same old book I'd read too many times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft orange light. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Then my phone buzzed. I don't usually get messages, not anymore. So I thought it was one of those spam texts again. But this one was different. It said, "Hello, I think you might be my grandmother." I froze. My heart began to race. For a moment I couldn't even breathe. I read it again, slowly, trying to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. I typed back, my fingers trembling. "What is your name, dear?" She replied, "My name's Lily. I found an old picture of my mom with someone who looks just like you. I searched your name online, and here you are." I just sat there, staring at the screen, as tears filled my eyes. Lily, my granddaughter, the little baby I held in my arms only once, before life tore us apart. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her everything, how I'd missed her every day, how I kept her baby blanket in a box, how I prayed to see her again before I left this world. But all I managed to type was, "I'm so happy you found me." She replied almost instantly, "I've been looking for you for months. Mom never talked about you much, but I always felt there was more to the story. I just wanted to know you." I wiped my eyes and smiled through the tears. In that moment, it didn't matter why or how things had gone wrong years ago. All that mattered was that she was reaching out and I was here to answer. We started talking every day. At first, our conversations were short, little introductions, small stories, shy laughter. But soon, it felt natural. Like the years between us had quietly folded away. She asked me about her mother's childhood. I told her how her mom used to braid her doll's hair, how she loved apple pie but always burned the first crust. We laughed about it together. It felt like time had stepped back, giving me a second chance, not to fix the past, but to love what was left of it. A few weeks later, she said something that made my heart skip a beat. "Grandma, can I come visit you?" I read those words again and again. I wanted to say yes right away, but fear whispered in the back of my mind. What if she didn't like me? What if meeting me changed her mind? But love is stronger than fear. So I took a deep breath and replied, "Yes, my darling. You can come anytime." The day she arrived, I felt like a young woman again. I baked her favorite cookies, the same recipe her mother loved. I even wore my blue dress, the one my husband used to say brought light to my eyes. When I heard the car pull up outside, my heart began to race. I walked slowly to the door, my hands shaking. And when I opened it, there she was. She looked just like her mother. Same soft brown hair, same curious eyes, but there was something more. Something gentle. Something open. We both stood there, frozen, unsure whether to speak or cry. Then she smiled, that same shy smile her mother once had, and whispered, "Hi, Grandma." I couldn't hold back anymore. I stepped forward and wrapped my arms around her. She hugged me back tightly, and I could feel her heartbeat against mine, quick, warm, alive. In that moment, everything I'd lost came rushing back, the laughter, the stories, the quiet evenings that once filled this home. It was as if all the years of emptiness had finally come to an end. She stayed with me that evening. We made tea, looked through old photo albums, and talked until midnight. She wanted to know everything about her grandfather, about the house, about the garden where her mother used to play. At one point, she looked up and said, "You know, Grandma, I feel like I've been here before." I smiled. "Maybe love leaves a memory in the air," I said softly. That night, when she went to bed, I stood by her door for a long time, just listening to her breathing, just feeling grateful. For years, I prayed for closure, but what I got was more than that. I got a beginning. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea in my hands. The air was cool, and the sky was full of stars, the kind of sky you don't see often anymore. I could hear the crickets, the soft rustle of the wind through the trees, and the quiet sound of my old rocking chair moving back and forth. And then I heard soft footsteps behind me. It was her, my granddaughter. She came out quietly, wrapped in a blanket, and sat beside me. For a moment, we didn't say a word. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. After a while, she said softly, "Grandma, thank you for waiting for me." I smiled, my eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness anymore. "I never stopped," I whispered. "I always believed one day love would find its way back." She reached out and held my hand. Her fingers were warm and gentle. It felt like all the years I had spent alone slowly melted away in that touch. She told me how she had always wondered about me, how her mother never spoke much, but deep inside, she knew there was more to the story. She said she used to look at old pictures online, searching for faces that looked like hers, and one day, she found me. We talked for hours that night about our childhood, her dreams, my memories of her mother, the family we both missed. It felt like building a bridge, plank by plank, across a long, broken river. When the first light of dawn began to appear, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Grandma," she said softly, "I think I've finally found where I belong." And in that moment, my heart felt whole again. All the years of waiting, all the letters that were never answered, all the birthdays spent in silence, they suddenly felt like they had a purpose, because they led to this moment. I realized something that morning. Sometimes love doesn't come when we expect it. Sometimes it takes years, maybe a lifetime, to find its way back home. But when it does, it's even more beautiful. She stayed with me for a few days before returning home. Before she left, she hugged me tightly and said, "I'll come back soon. I promise." And this time I believed her. Now, every Sunday afternoon, my phone rings. It's her voice, cheerful, full of life, calling to tell me about her week. Sometimes she sends pictures of her little apartment, her friends, or the pie she tried to bake using my recipe. And every time I feel the same quiet joy in my heart, the joy of being remembered, of being loved again. You know, people often ask me how I managed to live all those years alone. I tell them the truth, it was love that kept me going. Love that waited even when no one came. Love that believed even when it was forgotten. Now, when I sit on that same porch and look at the stars, I whisper a little prayer of thanks. Not for what I lost, but for what found its way back to me, ... Because sometimes the people we think are gone forever are just waiting for the right moment to find us again. And when they do, everything makes sense.